The desert was a cruel keeper. By day it blistered the skin, by night it stole the warmth from bones. And in the middle of that merciless country, Clara Dawson kept her lantern lit. Every evening, just as the last streak of blood-red sun disappeared behind the mountains, she struck a match, lit the wick, and set the lantern in the window of her small clapboard house. Folks in town whispered about it, said the widow was still waiting for a ghost that would never ride home. But the truth was simpler and sadder. The lantern wasn't for the dead, it was a plea to the living. Her husband, Matthew, had been gone near 2 years now, gunned down in broad daylight by Asher Kane's gang, outlaws who took the land, the cattle, and the law all in one sweep. Sheriff looked the other way. Too many boots in Kane's pocket, too many rifles at his back. All Clara had left was her patch of dirt, a boy of 7, and a will that hadn't bent yet, though it cracked with every drought. That night, the lantern flickered like a trembling prayer against the wind. Clara wiped the sweat from her brow, her palms raw from pulling weeds out of dust. Crops were little more than brittle stalks, and her boy, Sam, was already asleep on the porch, curled beneath a thin blanket. She whispered to herself, as if the desert might carry the words farther than any man ever would. Just one night of peace, just one hand willing to help. The only reply was the whistle of coyotes and the creak of her weathered fence. Far down the road, another set of boots struck dirt. Slow, steady, carrying no hurry, no hope. Elias Crow had been riding 3 days with nothing but a lame horse and a reputation that clung to him heavier than the dust on his coat. The scar that cut across his cheek had earned him more whispers than his name ever had. Men said he was a killer. Women crossed themselves when he walked into a room. Truth was simpler and darker. He was a man who had nothing left to lose. When he saw the lantern burning in the distance, he almost rode past. Lanterns meant life, and life meant entanglements. But the desert had a way of steering men toward places they swore they'd never set foot. He turned the reins. Clara didn't hear the horse until it was nearly at her gate. She rose, rifle in hand, the barrel steady though her heart thundered.
Trouble. Then again, so did every man who crossed her path these days. Finally, she nodded toward the trough. "Water's there, take what you need, then ride on." He led the horse forward, dipped the bucket, and let the animal drink. Only after the horse had its fill did he take a swallow himself, water dripping down his jaw, cutting through the desert's dust. "You keep a lantern burning," he said, glancing toward the window. "Most folks don't waste oil after dark." Clara's jaw tightened. "Most folks don't live alone." Something in his eyes shifted, though he didn't press. Instead, he set the bucket down and stepped back. "Thank you kindly." He moved to mount, then hesitated, as though something tethered him there. His gaze flicked from the lantern to the boy asleep on the porch. He saw the weariness in the widow's stance, the calluses on her hands, the rifle still trained but trembling. He pulled his hat lower. "Name's Elias. If you need a hand mending fences, I'll be here at first light. If not, I'll ride on." Before Clara could answer, he swung into the saddle and disappeared into the dark. She stood there long after the sound of hooves had faded, the lantern's glow trembling against the window pane. Her rifle lowered slowly. In the desert, help never came without a price. But for the first time in 2 years, her lantern hadn't burned unanswered, and the night felt just a little less empty. The morning broke red, a hard kind of red that promised another scorcher. Clara rose before the sun, as always, her hands busy with the day's losing battle against dust and weeds. Sam chased a chicken across the yard, barefoot and grinning, unaware that the world beyond their fence was full of men who would sooner take than give. She didn't expect Elias to keep his word. Men never did, not in her world. So when she saw him striding up from the road, hat low, a coil of rope over his shoulder, she tightened her jaw and went back to her work. "You came," she said flatly, not looking up. "Told you I would," Elias answered. His voice was steady, neither warm nor cold. He set down the rope, fetched a hammer from his saddlebag, and started mending the fence where a post had rotted through. Clara wiped her brow, eyeing him. He moved like a man used to work, deliberate, efficient. No wasted motions. She found herself staring longer than the last time he'd spat in her dirt and told her the land was as good as Kane's already. "Widow Dawson," Briggs called, swinging down from his horse.
"Sheriff says your taxes are due. You got coin?" Clara's rifle was leaning by the door, just out of reach. She straightened, wiping her hands on her apron. "You've had your payment, twice over." Briggs' grin widened. "Sheriff says different. Maybe we take payment another way." His eyes slid toward her, lingering too long. The other men chuckled, dismounting. Sam darted behind her skirts, clutching her apron. Clara's pulse quickened, but her face was stone. "You won't touch me. You won't touch my boy." Briggs stepped closer, hand resting near his revolver. "Lady, the law ain't here to protect you. Only Cain's law. And his law says..." The click of a hammer cut him off. Elias stood at the corner of the barn, rifle leveled, eyes cold as river stones. "His law don't run here." The men froze, then laughed. Briggs spat. "And who the hell are you?" Elias took a slow step forward, the rifle steady. "Just a man who doesn't like your face." One of the riders shifted, hand twitching near his gun. Elias didn't wait. His rifle cracked, and the man's hat flew off. A neat hole burned through the brim. The rider stumbled back, cursing. The yard went dead quiet. Briggs's jaw tightened. He measured Elias with a hard stare, then sneered. "Ain't worth dying over a widow's dirt. But this ain't done. Cain don't forgive." He swung into his saddle, motioning the others. "We'll be back." The gang rode off, dust swallowing them. Clara exhaled only when they disappeared beyond the ridge. She turned, fury trembling in her voice. "What did you do?" Elias lowered the rifle, calm as if he'd only swatted flies. "Kept them from taking what's yours. You think you scared them off? You just brought more trouble to my door." Trouble was already here. He set the rifle down, kneeling to pick up Sam, who was still shaking. He set the boy gently on his feet, ruffling his hair with a hand rough but careful. "Best learn to stand tall, son. Wolves smell fear." Sam nodded, eyes wide. Clara, though, burned hotter. She stepped close, her words low and sharp. "Don't you dare teach him your ways." I've from his holster and laid it on the fence post by her door. "You'll need this more than me," he said. Then he mounted, turned his horse, and rode into the blazing horizon. Clara stood there, Sam clinging to her side, watching the dust settle. She hated him for bringing the fight, for reminding her how close danger always was. But when she looked at the revolver gleaming in the sun, she realized the truth she couldn't admit. For the first time in years, someone had stood between her and the wolves, and that scared her more than the wolves ever had. 3 days passed. Clara kept her rifle leaned against the porch, Cain's shadow stretching long over every chore. She patched fences, carried water, kept Sam close. Every night she lit the lantern, though she told herself it was only habit now. But on the 4th morning, as she bent over a row of withered stalks, she heard boots in the dirt. She looked up, heart thudding. Elias Crow stood there again. No rifle raised this time, no threat on his face. Just a man carrying a coil of wire, a sack of nails, and the quiet weight of someone who'd chosen to return. "You forgot something," he said, nodding toward the revolver still sitting on her porch rail, untouched since the day he left. Clara straightened, brushing dirt from her skirts. "I didn't ask you back." "Didn't come 'cause you asked." He set down the sack, rolled up his sleeves. "Came 'cause the work's not done." She should have told him to leave, but when he dropped to one knee and started fixing the sagging gate, hammer steady, she said nothing. The day wore long. Elias mended the fence line, then the barn roof, moving with a patience she hadn't expected. Sam followed him everywhere, trailing at his heels like a pup. "Show me?" the boy asked, eyes bright as Elias whittled a stick into a crude horse. Elias didn't smile, but he handed over the knife, guiding Sam's small hand steady. "Don't force the blade," he murmured. "Let it find the grain." Clara watched from the porch, arms crossed, trying to ignore the like them.
but I'm not." Clara studied him, the sharp lines of his face, the scar that seemed carved by violence itself.
"What happened to you?"
His jaw tightened. "Things I can't take back, men I killed, mistakes that stuck." He tossed another branch on the fire. "I keep moving, 'cause if I stay anywhere, folks learn my name, and once they do, the past comes hunting." She swallowed, her voice softer now. "And yet here you are, teaching my boy to carve, fixing my roof." Elias finally looked at her, eyes steady. "Maybe I'm tired of being the kind of man kids hide from." The flames snapped, filling the quiet. Clara felt her own walls tremble, the ones she'd braced since Matthew's death. She told herself to stay sharp, to remember the danger he carried. But when his voice dropped low, it pulled something loose in her chest. "What about you?" he asked. Her throat tightened. "Matthew was a good man. Cain took him in front of me. Sheriff said best let it be. So I've kept the farm, kept Sam alive, kept the lantern burning. That's all there is left to tell." Elias didn't speak, but the silence between them wasn't empty. It was listening, and she realized how long it had been since anyone had simply sat with her grief without trying to cut it short. The days that followed found a rhythm. Elias rose early, working alongside her. He hauled water from the well, chopped wood, showed Sam how to track rabbits. At night, they ate together in the small kitchen, Sam chattering, Clara watching Elias soften in ways she hadn't thought possible. One evening, the wind came sharp and cold. The lantern flickered against the glass. Elias was patching a hole in the chair by the hearth when Clara set down a mug of coffee in front of him. Their fingers brushed, just for a second. The touch startled her, not the warmth of it, but how it lingered after she pulled away. Elias glanced at her hand, then at her, something unspoken in his eyes. He didn't reach again, but he didn't have to. Later that night, when Sam was asleep, Clara stepped onto the porch. Elias was already there, leaning against the post, watching the desert stars. "You keep that lantern burning," he said quietly. She nodded. Real laughter had started to creep back into the house, but the lantern still burned each night, and Clara knew why. Peace in this land was never more than borrowed time. The storm broke one afternoon when the horizon darkened with riders. Clara saw them first from the porch, dust boiling up behind them, the sharp glint of rifles catching the sun. She froze. Elias stepped out of the barn, wiping sweat from his brow, and followed her gaze. 6 men this time, and leading them, Asher Cain himself. Even from a distance, Clara felt the old fear coil in her stomach. The tall frame, the wide black hat, the cruel tilt of his mouth. She remembered him standing over Matthew's body, smoke curling from his pistol. Elias's jaw hardened. "Get Sam inside." Clara's heart raced. "Elias, don't— inside!" His tone left no room. She pulled Sam by the hand, shoving him into the house, though her own legs shook. The riders slowed, circling the yard like wolves. Cain dismounted, his boots striking dirt with lazy confidence. His eyes traveled over the house, the barn, then fixed on Clara as she stepped back onto the porch. "Well, if it ain't the Dawson widow," Cain drawled, voice smooth as oil. "Heard you found yourself a stray dog." Elias stood by the fence, rifle in hand, shoulders squared. "Name's Elias. You got business here?" Cain smirked, eyes narrowing on the scar. "Ah, the drifter with the red jaw. Heard stories. Gunslinger, outlaw, killer of men who never deserved it." He tilted his head. "Fits right in with my kind." "I ain't your kind," Elias said, steady. Cain chuckled, a low, mocking sound. "That's so. Funny, 'cause I see a man with blood on his boots and a widow who don't know better. That farm should have been mine 2 years ago, time you learned what it cost to cross Asher Cain." His men shifted, hands near holsters. The air thickened with gunpowder that hadn't been fired yet. Elias lifted the rifle, barrel steady.
You'll leave now." Kane's grin widened, but his eyes were ice. "Or what? You'll shoot me down in front of her boy? Make her bury another man she trusted?" Clara ground. Clara stepped down from the porch, her fists trembling. "You think this is helping?" she snapped. "You stand there with your gun, and all it does is draw him back stronger." Elias's voice was low. "If I hadn't, he'd have taken what he wanted today. And tomorrow he'll bring 10 more. You'll be gone or you'll be dead. And me and Sam will pay the price." Her chest heaved, words spilling like poison she'd kept too long. "I told you before, I don't need a hero. I need someone who'll stay." The silence that followed was sharper than any bullet. Elias's eyes flicked to hers, pain flashing there. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, as if every answer he had wasn't enough. Finally, he set the rifle against the fence and walked past her toward the barn. That night, Clara sat by the lantern, Sam asleep in the next room. She stared at the flame, her chest aching. She'd spoken truth, but it felt like she'd driven a knife through both of them. Elias came in late, dirt on his hands, the smell of hay clinging to him. He sat across the table, silent. For a long while they didn't speak, just listened to the crickets outside. At last he said, "You think I don't want to stay? That I ain't tried?" His voice was rough, strained. "Every place I've put my boots down, death follows. I don't get to keep things, Clara. I just get to bury 'em." Clara's throat tightened. "Maybe that's what I'm asking. Maybe I'd rather bury a man who tried than live alone under Kane's shadow." The words hung between them, raw, fragile. Elias's hands clenched on the table, the scar on his cheek catching the lantern glow. He looked at her like a man staring at something he'd never believed he deserved. And Clara, for the first time since Matthew's death, realized she was no longer talking to a stranger. She was talking to the man who might either save her or ruin her completely. The week that followed was no peace at all. Every creak of the windmill, every hoofbeat on the far ridge set Clara's heart racing. Elias grew quieter, spending long hours in the barn, sharpening tools that weren't tools at all, the cold steel of his revolver, the rifle he cleaned with a ritualist's care. Sam felt it too, Clara whispered, clutching Sam. Elias nodded once. "Stay inside. Don't open the door till it's done." Her throat closed. "You'll be killed." His eyes softened for a fraction, the steel breaking. "Better me than you." And then he was gone, into the dark. Clara pressed Sam behind her, heart hammering as she bolted the door. Through the window she saw the yard flood with riders. Torches blazed, casting cruel shadows over the house, the barn, the corral. Asher Kane rode at the front, eyes gleaming like a wolf's. His voice cut through the night. "Bring me the widow, boys. Burn the rest." Men dismounted, spreading like fire across dry grass. One swung a torch toward the barn. Clara nearly cried out. Every plank of wood Elias had rebuilt, every tool, every trace of Matthew's life stored inside, about to vanish in flame. But the torch never landed. The crack of a rifle split the night. A man fell, torch rolling from his grasp. Then another shot, another scream. Elias stepped from the shadows, rifle braced against his shoulder, every movement precise. He was no longer the weary drifter Clara had fed on that storm night. He was the gunslinger Kane had mocked, deadly, unflinching, carved by the West itself. The yard exploded, gunfire sparked, horses reared, men shouted and cursed. Elias moved like a man born to this chaos, cutting through Kane's gang with steel and fire. Clara pulled Sam down beneath the window, shielding him as bullets thudded into the walls. Her breath came ragged, every shot outside twisting her gut. She wanted to scream for Elias to run, to hide, but she knew there was no hiding, not tonight. Kane's voice bellowed over the chaos. "You think you can take my land, boy? You'll die for her, same as Dawson." Elias's reply was another shot, grazing Kane's hat clean off. The gang howled, fury doubling. They surged forward, pressing Elias back toward the corral. Clara peeked once through the window and felt her stomach drop. He was outnumbered 10-1. "Stay here," she whispered to Sam. The boy's eyes went wide. "Mama." But Clara was already moving. She's together, back to back, fighting like a storm that refused to break. But even storms burn out. A shot rang. Elias staggered, falling to one knee. Blood bloomed dark across his side. "No!" Clara screamed, firing blind into the smoke. Sam's cry echoed faint from the house. Kane's voice cut sharp. "Hold your fire!" The yard stilled. Clara dropped to Elias's side, pressing her hands to his wound, tears streaking her face. He grimaced, clutching her wrist. "You, stay inside," he rasped, a faint, broken smile tugging his mouth. She shook her head violently. "Don't you dare leave me too!" Boots crunched on gravel. Kane strode forward, pistol leveled. The fire painted his face red, his grin wide. "Look at this! The widow and her dog, bleeding in the dirt. Should have known it'd end like this." Clara rose, shotgun raised, fury blazing. "You'll never have this land." Kane laughed. You'll miss. You ain't got the steel." Her finger tightened, but before she could fire, Elias lurched up, staggering between her and Kane. His revolver flashed once. The bullet struck Kane dead center. The outlaw's grin froze, eyes wide in disbelief, before he crumpled to the dust. For a moment, silence swallowed everything. Then Kane's men broke, scattering like leaves before wind, their courage gone with their leader. Hooves thundered into the night until only echoes remained. Clara dropped to her knees, cradling Elias as his revolver slipped from his hand. His face was pale, sweat beading at his brow. "You fool!" she sobbed, pressing her hands to his wound again. "You could have lived!" His voice was faint but steady. "Better me than you." Her tears fell hot onto his chest. "Don't you dare leave us, not now, not after everything." Elias lifted a shaking hand, brushing her cheek. For the first time since she'd met him, his eyes carried no shadow, only peace. "Clara, you made me stay." Her heart broke, but she held him close, whispering his name again and again as the lantern's light flickered against the dawn creeping over the horizon. By the time the sheriff and townsfolk arrived at first light, the yard spooning water past his lips when he could swallow. Sam hovered too, his small hand often clutching Elias's good one, as if sheer stubbornness could anchor him to this world. Outside, the land bore its own scars. A patch of barn blackened, bullet holes pocking the corral. But the farm still stood, the house still stood, Clara still stood, and so did Elias, slowly. By the second week, he was upright in bed. By the third, he limped onto the porch with her help, leaning heavy on her shoulder. His jaw clenched with pain, but his eyes carried something Clara had not seen before. A man who had chosen, at last, to stay. One evening, as the sky bled purple and the crickets sang, Elias sat with Sam at his side, teaching him to carve with a dull knife. The boy grinned, wood chips clinging to his shirt. Clara watched from the doorway, the sight filling her chest with a warmth sharper than tears. Later, after Sam had gone to bed, Elias lingered on the porch. The lantern lit his scarred face in gold. Clara sat beside him, silence soft between them. "You know," he said finally, voice low, "I never thought I'd see a place like this. A place that made a man stop running." Clara folded her hands in her lap. "And now?" He turned to her, eyes steady. "Now I think I was meant to find it. Meant to find you." Her breath caught. For years she had lived in shadow, holding the memory of Matthew, holding the weight of fear. But here was this broken, bloodied man, one who had bled for her, fought for her, stayed for her. She reached for his hand. His fingers closed around hers, rough but sure. "You're not a stray dog, Elias," she whispered. "You're home." Seasons shifted. Grass pushed through charred soil. The barn was rebuilt again, this time with neighbors' help. Sam grew taller, his laughter louder, the haunted look in his eyes fading like an old scar. And Elias stayed, not as a guest, not as a shadow, but as a man who had found the one place he could be more than his past. He taught Sam to ride, to shoot, to whittle. He carved a new fence post with his own hands and pressed Clara's initials into the wood, sealing it like a vow. Clara found her own healing too. Each morning she rose not to dread but to quiet purpose. She planted
one place in all the wide desert where he was no longer cursed. Not the gun, not the blood, not the past, but here, with her. The wind moved through the grass outside, whispering like an old hymn. Clara leaned her head against Elias's shoulder, his arms circling her close. The fire crackled, steady and warm, and for the first time in years, both knew the night would hold.